Sayadaw explained on the meaning of the Dhamma, combining with both theory and practice. There are still definitions grammatically defining the Dhamma. Dhamma should be born by the person. Dhamma should be practiced by the person. So the Dhamma can prevent the person who practices so that the person could be free from the suffering. And also the Dhamma puts the person into the highest happiness, and the Dhamma has such qualities. The person who practices the Dhamma, the person who bears the Dhamma, will not fall into lower existences. The person will not stay long in the round of existences. So in this way, the Dhamma uplifts and protects the person so that the person will not fall into lower existences. Dhamma protects the person so that the samsara round of existences will not be prolonged. Without the Dhamma, one cannot save oneself. Without the Dhamma, one will be without anything to depend on, and thus the person will be inferior, low class, and degraded. If a person has some wholesome deeds, the person can be reborn as a human or a deva. And thus the round of existences will be prolonged. And at times the person can still fall into lower existences. When one has practiced Vipassana meditation effectively to a satisfactory level, then the person is saving himself, herself. Practicing the Dhamma, the person saves himself, herself from falling into lower existences. The person saves himself, herself, so that he, she will not be inferior, low class, or degraded. By practicing the Dhamma, he, she is saving himself, herself, so that round of existences will not be long. Buddha himself taught that one should depend on oneself, one should count on oneself. In order to encourage beings to practice Satipatthana meditation, Buddha said that one should depend on oneself, one should count on oneself, and also one should take refuge in the Dhamma. Most of the beings, without any good companionship, they perform unwholesome deeds, they indulge in defilements such as lobha, dosa, moha, and they have no savior to save them. Most of them are drowned in the current. When someone is drowned in the current of water, below the person is water, above the person is also water, and at every direction there is water, and the person is left without anything to depend on, anything to count on. So most of the beings, they are drowned in the current of kilesa, defilements. and thus they are committing misconduct, they are committing wrong actions, and their moral conduct have been ruined. So most of the people are performing transgressions and misconduct without having anyone to save them, and they do not know the correct way to save themselves. Buddha warned beings and Buddha encouraged beings to depend on oneself, to take refuge in oneself. And also, one should take refuge in the Dhamma, but no other thing. So in this way, Buddha encouraged beings to depend on oneself, to count on oneself, and not to depend on, count on other things. And also, Buddha taught to take refuge in the Dhamma and not to take refuge in other things. There are still many things to be explained, but Sayadaw will explain them when Sayadaw has the opportunity. So in brief, Dhamma uplifts, protects, helps and uplifts the practitioner so that the practitioner will not be inferior, degraded or low class. The person will not fall into lower existences, and that the person's round of existences will not be prolonged. That's why Dhamma should be practiced by the person. One should bear the Dhamma. One should practice the Dhamma so that one can save oneself from falling into lower existences. Today, Sayadaw will continue to explain that in order to practice systematically, in order to overcome the opposite mental states, kilesa defilements, one should listen and follow the guidance and instruction given by the wise person who could lead the correct way. One should have faith and confidence in the Buddha who led the way, who led the path. One should accept, confirm that Buddha is the person who guided the correct way. So just by listening to the instruction is not enough. One should practice accordingly in order to overcome the opposite mental states. By overcoming the defilements, by removing the defilements, one can discern dukkha satya and samudaya satya, the truth of suffering, the truth of origin of suffering, which are difficult to be discerned because they are profound. And by removing the defilements, one can also discern the other two truths, magga satya and nirodha satya, the truth of path leading to cessation and the truth of cessation, which are profound and thus difficult to be discerned. If one does not see the truth, one will be covered with thick layer, intense layer of moha delusion. If one is covered with thick layers of moha delusion, then one can take suffering as pleasant, and one takes the cause of suffering as the cause of happiness. So in this way, they will commit wrongful things, and there is no way of return from wrongful path. Someone who walks in dark can step on thorns or spikes, or one can step on poisonous snakes, centipede, scorpion, and so on. So in the same way, so the person cannot reach the destination. So in the same way, a person who is covered with delusion cannot reach the destination, which is Nibbana. So in order to reach the destination, one should walk on the correct path in order to be free from suffering. Buddha led the way. Buddha led the correct method in order to reach the destination. And today Saraji will explain what is needed in order to have faith and confidence in the Dhamma and the Buddha. One should have faith and confidence on the Buddha who led the way, and one should have faith and confidence in the teaching that Buddha had taught. One must come to acceptance, confirmation, and decision on the Buddha and the Dhamma. One should have faith and confidence in the Buddha and Dhamma. So it means that without faith and confidence in the Buddha and the Dhamma, it cannot be done. If one has not awakened one sada, faith and confidence, then one should wake one sada, faith and confidence. Buddha attained enlightenment. Buddha removed all the defilements by attaining Arhata Magga Jnana, by attaining the last level of path knowledge. And Buddha attained Sattva-nyutta Jnana, omniscient knowledge, and all the virtues that Buddha was worthy of. After Buddha gained enlightenment, Buddha spent 7 weeks, 49 days, 1 week in each place. So after 49 days, Buddha reflected to whom Buddha should teach. Most of the beings are interested in sensual objects and sensual pleasure. Most beings are wasting their time with sensual pleasure. Most of the beings have thick, intense layers of defilements. So Buddha was at first reluctant to teach. There was a very slight inclination that arose in the Buddha not to teach. So when Mahabrahma realized the situation, the Mahabrahma immediately approached the Buddha. And the Mahabrahma told the Buddha that beings had very thick, intense layers of defilements, and thus Mahabrahma requested the Buddha to teach. If the beings did not get the chance to listen to the Dhamma, then their lives will be a total loss. So that's why the Mahabrahma requested the Buddha to give teaching to the beings. So after this incident, Buddha reflected to whom Buddha should teach. So Buddha reflected, thought about the beings who could accept the teaching of the Buddha. So Buddha recalled 2 persons, the 2 hermits who taught the Buddha to be about Lokiya jhana the practice of supramundane jhana. The two hermits, Alara and Uddaka, they attain samapatti, attainment. Among these two, one got 8 kinds of attainments, and the other got 7 attainments. These two hermits were the meditation teachers who taught meditation during that time. But what they taught was yoga. It was mere concentration practices. Attaining these attainments, the two hermits removed kilesa defilements, distanced the kilesa defilements, but they have not totally removed kilesa defilements, for they had not attained path of fruition knowledge. Because these two hermits had attainment, they were the ones who could accept the teaching, who could understand immediately if they were taught. So Buddha was going to taught these two hermits. But Buddha reflected that one of the hermits passed away 7 days before Buddha's enlightenment, and one of them passed away 1 day before Buddha's enlightenment. Both of the hermits passed away before Buddha's enlightenment, and both of them were reborn as immaterial Brahma. They were born in immaterial Brahma world, and thus they had no materiality, they had no body, but they only had mentality. Because they did not have any materiality, they did not have the body, they did not have the eyes, so they could not see the Buddha. For they did not have ears, they could not listen to the Dhamma. So Buddha got some vega, spiritual urgency. The two hermits suffered a great loss because they were reborn as immaterial Brahma before Buddha's enlightenment. So these two hermits suffered a great loss. Because they could not listen to the teaching of the Buddha, they could not be free from suffering. Because they passed away before Buddha's enlightenment, because they were reborn in immaterial realm, it was a great loss for the two hermits, and Buddha arose spiritual urgency. Buddha was endowed with glory, which was called karma. It means that Buddha could get anything that Buddha had wished. So some may draw conclusion that because Buddha was endowed with this quality, some draw conclusion that Buddha could have created ears and eyes so that the two hermits could see the Buddha and listen to the teaching. But it was not done. Buddha did not do anything that was not natural or sensible. There are two factors for a person to attain supramundane knowledge. Mentioned in Anguttara Nikaya, there are two factors. One can attain Vipassana Samadhi and Magga Samadhi. These factors are: number one, Parato Gosa. One should listen, one should learn the correct method. And the second one is Yoniso Manasikara. One should practice accordingly. One should practice according to the guidance given. That is, to note the presently arising object. So that's why one should learn the correct method of practice. Learning the correct method of practice without practicing accordingly, it is not enough, but one should practice according to the guidance and instructions. Because the two hermits were reborn in the immaterial realm, they had no ears, they could not listen to the teaching of the Buddha, and thus they suffered a great loss. They lost the opportunity to attain path and fruition knowledge. Buddha did not do anything that is not natural or sensible. If Buddha did things with his powers to do anything, then he could have created so that beings will not fall into lower existences. He could have created so that everyone will gain supramundane knowledge. So if Buddha did that, Buddha will be no different from a factory producing noble person. It was not a sensible thing to do, and thus Buddha did not use his power to create or produce noble person. Buddha did things that are sensible. Before Buddha gained enlightenment, people had belief, people had faith and confidence in Mahabrahma. People believe that Mahabrahma controls the whole world. They think that the Mahabrahma governs the whole world. So they believe that Mahabrahma is the only God. They believe that Mahabrahma is neither sad or happy. There is no physical, mental suffering of the Mahabrahma, and so on. One cannot see the Mahabrahma with one's eyes. If Mahabrahma wants to be seen, he created the body so that others can see. So it was heard that way. So during that time, during Buddha gained enlightenment, people were believing in Mahabrahma, the creator. They believe that Mahabrahma is creating the being. And in the other hand, they also believe that good deeds bring good results and bad deeds bring bad results. So these people were having dual beliefs of both the Mahabrahma and the Kamma. So in that way, they were holding dual beliefs, belief on Mahabrahma, and at the same time, they also believe that good deeds bring good results and bad deeds bring bad results. But according to the Buddha's teaching, there is only one belief in Buddhism, that is, believing that good deeds bring good results and bad deeds bring bad results. Before Buddha gained enlightenment, the faith and confidence in the Mahabrahma was very deep-seated, that it was not easily removed. The belief in the Mahabrahma was so deep-seated, so that it was not, such belief was not easily removed. They were clinging onto the belief in Mahabrahma. So they hold very high esteem of Mahabrahma. When Mahabrahma knelt before the Buddha and requested the Buddha to teach, seeing that their God, Mahabrahma, had to kneel in front of the Buddha to make a request to the Buddha, only then they realized that Buddha was a lot higher than their God, who was Mahabrahma. Seeing Mahabrahma kneeling and making requests to the Buddha to teach, these beings who were believing in Mahabrahma came to realize that Buddha was higher than the Mahabrahma. So in this way, they awaken faith and confidence on the Buddha. So in order to practice the true method, the correct method of practice is connected with the request of the Mahabrahma, the request for the Buddha to teach. And seeing the beings, seeing that their God, Mahabrahma, kneeling and requesting the Buddha, they develop faith and confidence on the Buddha, that Buddha was the highest among all beings. Mahabrahma was endowed with the quality of Sambhavaniya. The Mahabrahma was endowed with the quality of praiseworthiness. Mahabrahma was worthy of respect and honor. During that time, Mahabrahma was the being who was worthy of praise and respect. So when Mahabrahma himself knelt down and made a request to the Buddha to teach, the beings immediately developed saddha, faith and confidence on the Buddha, that Buddha was higher than the Mahabrahma. So in this way, they develop faith and confidence on the Buddha, and thus they also have faith and confidence on the teaching of the Buddha. Having faith and confidence on the Buddha and the teaching, the beings were able to practice according to the teaching, and thus they removed kilesa defilements. Being able to remove kilesa defilements, these beings become pure, cultured, gentle, lovable, and tamed, and they attain Ariyamagga Jnana, path knowledge. When they attain path knowledge, their saddha, faith and confidence become very firm and unshakable, and thus they also discern the full noble truth. If it were to explain in detail, it will be very long. When Sayadaw gets opportunity, he will explain on Brahmavada, Buddhavada, and Dhammavada. When one removes kilesa defilements, one will discern the truth, dukkha satya and samudaya satya, the truth of suffering, the truth of origin of suffering, which were difficult to be discerned because they are profound. But when one removes kilesa defilements, these truths which are profound will be obvious to the yogi. And the other two truths, Nirodha Satya, the truth of cessation, and Magga Satya, the path leading to cessation, they are profound and thus difficult to be discerned. But when one Vipassana knowledge, when one's insight knowledge becomes matured, one attains Riya Magga Phala Jnana, path and fruition knowledge. When one attains path and fruition knowledge, one discerns the other two truths, Nirodha Satya and Magga Satya as well. So by discerning Dukkha Satya, the truth of suffering, by removing Samudaya Satya, by removing the origin of suffering, one develops knowledge stage by stage. When one develops knowledge stage by stage, Bhavana Kusala, the mental development wholesomeness, become developed, cultivated and increased. When the yogi practices continuously, his or her mind will become calm and collected. Yogi develops knowledge stage by stage so that the bhavana citta becomes from small to big, from tender to ripe, and from less to many. During the time of practice, one's mind is free from defilement, raga, dosa, moha, and thus the mind is pure and clean. Also, the person's body, speech and mind become pure, clean, gentle, lovable, cultured and tamed. When one gains Udiyakaya Jnana, knowledge into fast arising and passing away of objects, then the yogi gets the true taste of Dhamma. When the yogi gets to the stage of Udiyakaya Jnana, yogi is sure to attain supramundane knowledge in this very life if she pursues practice. When one gains Udiyakaya Jnana, the person is sure to attain supramundane knowledge in this very life if the yogi practices further. In Anguttara Nikaya, Buddha directly mentioned 5 factors of striving in order to gain supramundane knowledge. The first one is faith and confidence. One should have faith and confidence in the Buddha. One should have faith and confidence in the virtues of the Buddha. By having faith and confidence in Buddha, one will also have faith and confidence in Dhamma. And also one will have confidence in oneself. When one gains Udiyakaya Jnana, one's faith and confidence becomes amazingly strong. The second factor is health. One should be healthy. But actually there are cases when people who are sick practice diligently and attain supramundane knowledge. So to be healthy, it is not as important, but it is better if one is healthy to practice. And the third one is one should be honest. One should not hide one's weaknesses and shortcomings. But especially to the meditation teacher, one should reveal one's weaknesses so that the teacher can make correction. And also, one should not one should not show the kind of quality that one does not have. One should not pretend to have the qualities one actually doesn't have. So in this way, one should also have honesty. And the other one is, one should have diligent effort, ardent effort. One should exert ardent effort in order to dry up the kilesa moisture. One should practice diligently, intensively, apart from sleeping hours. When exerting ardent effort, one will develop sati, mindfulness. The noting mind will stick onto the object of meditation, and thus the mind will be calm and collected. In this way, one develops viriya, sati and samadhi, effort, mindfulness and concentration. And when the noting mind falls on the object, yogi comes to know the true nature. One should be noting on the four fields of meditation: bodily actions, sensations and feelings, mentality, and also other mental objects. By being mindful on bodily actions, it will be kaya nupassana. Being mindful on sensations and feelings, it is vedana nupassana. Being mindful of one's mind, it is citta nupassana. Being mindful of the mental objects, it is Dhamma nupassana. By being mindful on these four fields of objects, one will gain knowledge. By gaining knowledge, one removes not knowing and knowing wrongly. One should exert effort. Exerting effort, mindfulness will develop. The mind will fall calm and collected, and thus one will come to know the true nature and develop knowledge. Failing to exert effort, there will not be mindfulness. The mind will not be calm or collected. The mind will be distracted, and thus the person will not develop knowledge. So that's why one should exert ardent effort in the practice. In Satipatthana Sutta, it is said that by being mindful, one can overcome the defilements such as lobha and dosa, avijja, domanassa, which is greed and hatred. By being mindful of the presently arising object, my kilesa defilements have no chance to arise. If one fails to note the presently arising object, lack of mindfulness, the mind will not be guarded, protected away from the defilements. Not being exerting effort, the path of unwholesomeness will open. One will be accepting kilesa defilements if one does not make effort. If there is lack of mindfulness, kilesa defilements will enter into the mind. Lack of samadhi, concentration, the mind will be scattered and distracted. Failing to aim the noting mind towards the object, then the wrongful thoughts can arise. Based on the object that the person fails to note, there will be not knowing. One will not discern mind and matter, cause and effect, or the characteristics of impermanent suffering and non-self. And thus, there will be not knowing. Not being mindful, kilesa defilements will have the chance to arise. By being mindful, the defilements that can arise by lack of mindfulness will be removed. Based on the object that the yogi is able to note effectively, the defilements such as lobha and dosa, greed or hatred, is momentarily removed. So by practicing Satipatthana meditation, one is sure to remove the kilesa defilements. At the stage of Udyavaya Jnana, one's Viriya, Sati, Samadhi and Panya, effort, mindfulness, concentration and wisdom become strong. When Viriya, Sati, Samadhi and Panya become strong, the person discerns very clearly the truth. If one does not discern mind and matter, by discerning clearly, when Viriya, Sati, Samadhi, Panya becomes strong, then one discerns clearly. When one discerns mind and matter, one overcomes the wrong view of self, soul or being. Understanding cause and effect, one overcomes the wrong view of Mahabrahma. Understanding impermanent suffering and non-self, one will no longer take things as permanent good or pleasant. When the yogi discerns fast arising and passing away of the object, his or her knowledge becomes very clear. At the stage of Udyavaya Jnana, the Dhamma pleasure surpasses so many times than the worldly pleasure. Yogi gains unique, unrelinquishable kind of happiness that surpasses so many times than the worldly pleasure. And at times, yogi can be liking the delicate, very subtle kind of happiness, and there can be subtle craving. When one can overcome strong kind of greed and hatred, one can also overcome refined form of greed. So based on the object that the person is able to note effectively, one can remove kilesa defilements. At each moment of noting, there will be momentary removing of the defilements, and also knowledge will be developed. The object, Kaya, Vedana, Citta and Dhamma, by being mindful continuously on the presently arising object, one understands that they are impermanent, they are suffering, unpleasant, and there is no atta involved. Every moment one is being mindful, Viriya, Sati, Samadhi, effort, mindfulness and concentration become strong and continuous. So the defilements such as lobha and dosa cannot arise. These kilesa defilements become more and more distant. Yogi experiences that the defilements are becoming more and more distant. It is called vikambana pahana, removing of these defilements by distancing them. When one knows distinctly, Viriya, Sati, Samadhi, effort, mindfulness and concentration become very strong. These three, effort, mindfulness and concentration, make up Samadhi Khanda, the concentration group. And these three extinguish the kilesa defilements. Having these three, Viriya, Sati and Samadhi, one suppresses kilesa defilements, and thus these three are called samatha. When these factors of samatha, Viriya, Sati and Samadhi become strong, then the bhavana citta is developed, cultivated and increased, so that the bhavana citta becomes from small to big, from less to many, and because one develops knowledge, one's mind becomes from tender to ripe. And the mind becomes very subtle, very gentle. The mind becomes more and more gentle. So even based on the objects that one is not being mindful, grows kind of lobha dosa, grows greed and anger, does not arise. Mostly the kilesa defilements are suppressed, calm and tranquilized. Even though the person may be resting from being mindful, even at the time of rest, it seems that gross defilements does not arise. And at times, yogi feels satisfied that even when resting, gross defilements does not arise. And the person sometimes thinks that she has removed these defilements. So, at this stage, gross kind of defilements cannot arise, and such gross defilements are being distanced. At the higher knowledges, especially Sankharupeka Jnana, at the stage of Sankharupeka Jnana, things are very subtle, and one should practice, one should try hard so that one will experience removing of the kilesa defilements oneself. At the stage of Sankharupeka Jnana, the insight of tranquility in all formations, the notings are very continuous that kilesa defilements do not arise. Even if one purposely incites defilements, the defilements do not arise. Even if the yogi purposely directs his or her mind onto desirable and undesirable objects, the mind will not go at all, or even if it goes, it quickly comes back to the object of meditation. It is compared to a boomerang. Just as the boomerang comes back to the player, in the same way, the noble mind comes back immediately, even if the yogi directs the mind to other things. So the defilements are distancing. Having samadhi khanda, having the concentration group, this concentration group is distancing the kilesa defilements. It is called Vipassana. The difference between the two, the Dhamma Bahana and Vipassana, or in other words, the Dhamma Vinaya and Vipassana is that removing the kilesa defilements based on the object that the person can note effectively is called the Dhamma Bahana or the Dhamma Vinaya. Based on the objects that the person fails or misses to note, but the defilements are distancing and being removed due to the momentum of practice, it is called Vipassana Bahana or Vipassana Vinaya. By practicing diligently, yogi gains these two, the Dhamma Bahana, or in other words, the Dhamma Vinaya, and also Vipassana Bahana or Vipassana Vinaya. When the yogis Viriya, Sati, Samadhi and Panya, effort, mindfulness, concentration and wisdom become strong, then
the Anapana as well as the Anapana. One should practice Vipassana meditation so that one's Viriya, Sati, Samadhi and Dhamma, effort, mindfulness, concentration and wisdom becomes strong and complete. When the yogis practice doing momentum, the person develops moral shame and moral fear. His or her moral shame and moral fear becomes very strong, and the yogi has moral shame and moral fear from missing or failing to note. Yogi has moral shame and moral fear from the arising of kilesa defilements. So at this stage, yogi feels shame and fear from missing or failing to note. When these two mental states, moral shame and moral fear, becomes very strong, then the mindfulness becomes continuous, and thus yogi makes progress in the practice very fast. When one's good mental states become strong, and when one's hiri and uttapa, moral shame and moral fear, become strong, then mindfulness becomes continuous, and the yogi can attain superlanding knowledge in this very life. When one's Vipassana knowledge, insight knowledge, becomes matured, one attains Magga Phala Gnana, path and fruition knowledge, and realizes Nibbana, the true cessation. When one has gained path and fruition knowledge, when one has attained Nibbana, one has totally removed the defilements that can lead to further assistances. When one becomes a Sotapanna, stream enterer, one has only 7 assistances as human or deva. So beyond the 7 assistances, the sufferings will be totally extinguished. So if one cannot become an arhat in this very life, one should at least aim to become a Sotapanna, a stream enterer. When one comes across the teaching of the Buddha as a human being, one should at least get to the stage of overcoming gross defilements that can lead to further assistances. May you all be able to practice diligently, so that may you all be able to remove Sakkaya Ditthi, wrong view, believing in self and soul, and Vicikicca, skeptical doubt. May you all be able to practice to attain at least the first path and fruition knowledge, and may you all be able to practice so that you will become a true disciple of the Buddha. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.